Okay, let's talk about clandestine linkup. Let's make some sense of this first. You know, it's often mentioned here and there, but there's not a lot of how-to, nor do I think there's a very clear understanding of it. The word linkup is pretty clear. It's any two units or subunits coming together in the battle space. And you say, well, whoop-de-doo. That's you and your friend meeting in a parking lot of your favorite pub in broad daylight and then going in and having a beer. Yeah, it's that simple when you're in a secure environment under perfect lighting conditions. This platoon walks over and links up with that platoon, and you're in the in a safe area, well behind, like in the not the enemy's rear, but in the friendly rear area. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. We still are armed to the teeth, but that kind of link up really is not problematic unless the enemy's been infiltrating in that area. It's a pretty safe, secure place to do this, and it's very simple to do in daylight. Clandestine means that we're doing it secretively. That is, that we're linking up and we're trying not to let the enemy know that we're linking up. Why? Because a platoon of 40 linking up with a platoon of 40 becomes a unit of 80 people, far more capable. So growth, right? And if 3 platoons, well, now it's a whole 150 man company. That's a far more capable combat force than a platoon of 40. And so this is why you don't want the enemy to know. Furthermore, clandestine tends to suggest, it's not absolutely true, but it tends to suggest that we're already in the enemy's area. That is, that we're in their rear area when we link up. That's the clandestine part of it, right? I've already infiltrated into the enemy's area. We will cover infiltration and exfiltration in another video. But for here, we're going to talk about the link up. Sounds rather mundane, sounds a little bit boring, and perhaps it is. But you get this wrong and you have catastrophic failure. It sounds simple. We've done this in the Army. We teach this at One Shepherd. I am telling you, this is a far more difficult task than you think it is. And let's go to the board and explore why that's the case. The important thing to remember is that we are in the enemy's rear area. That is, we have already infiltrated into and past enemy's front line. And so let's say their front line is somewhere down here. And we'll remember 2 circle X connected by a line means the forward edge of battle area and the forward line of troops. And if we good guys are this way, forward lines of troop is right in front of that. This is a denotation that anything behind here is the enemy's rear area. And that's a little can be misleading because is it the company rear area? That's here. Is it the battalion rear area? Okay, then that's here. Is it the brigade rear area? Okay, that's here. And it keeps going back, right? But nonetheless, we're saying, okay, we need to do some kind of mission over here. So we have already infiltrated somewhere through here. And in order for that infiltration to be successful, we want to have as small of a footprint forward. Meaning a 4-man fire team is more likely to have success infiltrating than a 12-man squad. But a 12-man squad is more likely to have success infiltrating unnoticed by the enemy than, let's say, a 40-man platoon. And a 40-man platoon is more likely, and this just keeps going. So maybe we've had, fire teams or squads infiltrate. And now we're going to come together because I said, wow, I wanted my entire 40-man platoon back there. I want to assemble them so that we can now take that combat force to bear against enemy forces, particularly where the enemy isn't expecting us. This is the stuff of raids and ambushes or reconnaissance, deep reconnaissance. Maybe we're not going to let the enemy know that we're back here. But either way, we're out here and I've got a 40-man platoon, so I say, well, I've got 3 squads and every squad has 3 fire teams. I'm going to have each squad break into 3 teams. And that's for the whole entire thing, and then the command team. So I've got 10, count them, 10 infiltration teams. And they're very tiny. These teams are 4 and 5 people each. That's all they are. And then they're going to come together to form this full-size platoon. Now you see why infiltration, and we're doing this as all these different teams, and we're breaking it all along the enemy's front so that the enemy doesn't notice. Or if they do notice, hey, we think something happened over here. Oh, we saw that too. Oh, we saw that too. Maybe they're not seeing the bigger picture, okay? So now we need to come together. How does a team come together? Well, very typically, you have a far recognition signal. Before I go there, I realize, whoops, missed a step. You have to have a rendezvous point. You have to have a rendezvous point, and you should have an alternate, and maybe even an alternate to the alternate. But you need to have a point on a map where you say, okay, this is the area we want to come into. So maybe in the village, that's a village. There is a church on the edge of town, that's a church. We are going to meet in the woods immediately behind that church. I can find the village. It's a tiny little farming village, couple few hundred people. I see the church, and I can see immediately north some woods. So we have a rendezvous point. When you're coming up to that rendezvous point, you need a far recognition signal that lets the other team know, hey, I am friendly and I am coming into the rendezvous point. Because if anybody's already there or getting ready to go in there, they want to make sure the enemy isn't there. Well, what if the enemy's there? Remember I said you had an alternate rendezvous point and maybe even yet a third? That's why. If this is compromised in any way, shape, or form, I don't know, maybe the enemy isn't there, but maybe they're having their annual church festival, Farmville garden party. It's still compromised. So you have to think about these things. Rendezvous point, step one. Step two, far recognition signal. What does that look like? Well, we whip out our radio and well, wait a minute. That's a great way to do it. But do you have secure enough radios that the enemy won't figure out that someone's broadcasting over here? So it very likely is a radio, but a far recognition signal can go many different ways. We can agree to all come into this using this path. Here we go. We have a path going through. It's a footpath. And we say, all right, then our far recognition signals all hang a yellow flag somewhere on that path. That tells me, someone is already here. Whatever, move it to the left, move it to the right, do whatever you need to do. But you need to say, okay, we're in the area too. So this can be very, very complicated stuff. You can do pyrotechnics, but once again, if I'm back here shooting flares, the enemy's going to take notice that someone's in the rear area shooting flares. It can be whistles, it can be auditory, it can be visual, it can be all these different things. It usually is not vocal. Usually vocal is what we call a near recognition signal, but it can be vocal. It can be vocal because, conditions, cold weather, voice travels very far, or a whistle or something like this. And we may say near recognition signal is visual confirmation. We all know each other by name and face. And we know that we are deep in the enemy's rear area, so there's not going to be any other friendlies that come here, unless maybe they're partisans. But all of that, you have to take that into consideration. You need to understand that in order to come together, you have to have a rendezvous point. You have to have a far recognition signal that allows you to risk coming really physically close. How close? As close as you and I. It might be on a well moonlit night that I actually see you and go, all right, this is Bill. Okay, this is Frank. This is Stevie. I need to be able to see you and recognize you to say, come on in. Again, often it is some kind of radio or auditory signal that is given from some distance, possibly visual. So that's your far recognition signal. And then when you come in, it's simply them saying, hey, think about it in the darkness, right? You got to get real close, and they give you a number combination. Let's say the number combination is 5. So I go 4, halt. And I stop you and I say 4. And you say 1. Well, that adds up to 5. And you come in. Don't do subtractions, but that's how to use number combinations. And you also don't want your number combination to be something ridiculous. We generally try to keep it down at very low numbers, not 892. It's going to be 5 to 15, something in here that simple addition works. So far recognition signal, near recognition signal. Now you start to bunch up, and you start to bunch up, and from that area you can it may become de facto your patrol base or /hide, or you may then move together as an entire unit to go to another patrol base or hide. That is not always recommended, though. In one sense it is. Why would I want to move off of the rendezvous point? Well, what if you were observed coming into that rendezvous point, right? You have 10 teams trying to link up. You could be observed, and that's one reason, well, okay, then it'd be safer for us once we do this to make sure we're not being observed, make sure it is good and dark, and let's go move to another hide position / patrol base. Good idea. The downside of that plan, I've seen it where we sit there and people you've got 10 teams out, and one team, we're all supposed to show up at X amount of hour, but one team gets seriously delayed, and they're not going to know where the patrol base is unless that was briefed in the plan. So they're trying to get to the rendezvous point, but they're 8 hours behind schedule. So what do? You get up and you leave them, and they get here and they're like, crap, rendezvous is gone. I don't know where the patrol / hide is. So you have to have that kind of detail. The longer and more developed this plan, they need to know what happens if you don't get there. Well, go to another rendezvous point, wait this much time, and from our hidden position, our hide position, we'll dispatch another team to police up all the stragglers. So you've got your rendezvous point, and you've got a time, and you've got near and far recognition signal. Then you're going to move to a patrol base. We've moved to a patrol base, but your stragglers can't go there. That will compromise your patrol base. So you're going to send a team out to go pick up stragglers from a secondary rendezvous point. And now you can police them up here and bring them in. This is getting a little complicated, isn't it? Because each one of these rendezvous points, they must have a time, a near and far recognition signal, and then a means to get back and forth to the patrol base. And again, you say, well, why didn't you just tell them where the patrol base is? It can compromise a patrol base in more ways than you're thinking. Yes, because they're walking through and then the enemy's observing them. They go, okay, now we know where the patrol base is. Let's just send in RD or raid it or do whatever. But the other thing is, what if one of those teams are compromised? What if they're interrogated and they tell them where that patrol base is? There's, believe it or not, part of clandestine operations, part of it may not be disclosed to you until you're well inside of the mission. This is just a simple explanation of clandestine linkup, but you can see that clandestine operations are exactly that. They assume that we are in some kind of threat environment, usually deep in the enemy's rear, and that there's a lot of secrecy about this. There's also a great deal of protection. Remember, this might be a 5,000 man enemy unit, and we've got a platoon of 40 out here that's looking to do mayhem. Secrecy is incredibly important to them when you go, oh yeah, back to friendly lines. My gosh, they've got 3 miles and 5,000 enemy troops. They're not going to get back. Not 40 of them. This is why clandestine linkup is done, and this is a real down and dirty overview of how that is achieved. Regardless of what your mission is beyond that, and again, infiltration, exfiltration, and re-entry of passage of lines and re-entry of friendly lines, that'll be covered in another video. All right, thanks. We'll talk to you later.